Thank you, Dr. Adams, and thank you all. I'm glad to be back here, and I just need to check my voice. Everyone can hear my voice? Yes, and is this good for the video crew? Good, good. Because what I'd like to do is kind of keep you awake. I think the greatest challenge for leadership in the 21st century is to stay awake. And I think most of us have a good idea of what I mean when I say that. I'm really talking about waking up subjectivity, becoming an agent, becoming someone who makes things happen. There's one definition of leadership, which is leaders are people who make things happen. Now, that can be for good or bad. We have excellent examples of both sides. But leaders make things happen. I wanted to get us started doing two things today before we move into the lecture. One is I'd like for you to join me in creative visualization. That is, I'm going to ask you to sit where you are, and if you can, just for a moment, both Miss Nash and Miss Bayham in the back have your backs, so you can close your eyes. And I'll watch you from here. I want you to get real comfortable where you are, relax, sit up with an erect posture with your feet flatly on the floor, backs erect. Take a deep breath. Eyes closed. And I want you to imagine your residence hall where you sleep, or it can be your bedroom at home, or it could even be on a beach. Your call. It can be outdoors, but you're asleep. And if everybody would participate, I'd be grateful. Keep your eyes closed. Don't look around. No need to look around. Stay with me just for a moment. Follow my voice. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Exhale. In. Out. One more time. In. Out. Whether you're in the bedroom or on the beach, wherever your place is, imagine yourself waking up. Waking up. Maybe standing up, stretching, flexing your arms, straightening your back, but waking up. And after you are comfortable waking up, I want you to put on your running shoes and wake up running. Take a deep breath again. Wake up running. Thanks. You can come back now. I think that leaders in the 21st century not only must stay awake, they must wake up running. Because of the urgency of the hour, the critical issues at stake for all of us, whether we are aware of it or not, there's so much going on in the world right now that will impact your life forever. Let me say that again without reservation. There are things going on right now in this world that will impact, affect your life forever. And if you're sleeping through life, if you fail to wake up running, I dare say you'll be running a senseless errand, running somebody else's errand. And when you run somebody else's errand, you'll never find your reason for existence. That's the first thing I wanted to do before we get started. Second thing I want to do is teach you an old rap song, one that you know already, but this is before rap and hip hop. This is even before the blues. Let's see here. It's called Plenty Good Room. Y'all heard the Glee Club sing this, right? Or you heard it in your church or choirs. How you doing, man? Assalamu alaikum. God bless you. Hey. So I want you to stand. I want you to sing this song with me and sing it in your best voice. And if somebody wants to hook it up, really, go on and hook it up. But I learned it this way. It says, plenty good room, plenty good room, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Choose your seat and sit. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Look at the guy next to you. Say, plenty good room in my Father's kingdom. Plenty good room, plenty good room. Choose your seat and sit. Oh, man. I remember, it's terrible to get old because all you do is remember. But I remember, man, when brothers used to grab a song like that and we'd go out in the, whatever y'all call this, the plaza, and we'd form circles and they'd create stuff out of that song. I know y'all that because I'm telling you, black folks are some creative human beings. Have a seat. I just want to teach you that song. Before I bore you with these heady concepts, plenty good room. Just imagine, huddled up in slave ships, incarcerated on slave plantations, without any mobility or movement of the body. These old black and unknown bards sang a song, Plenty Good Room. Plenty good room. And there was no room anywhere. They were even restricted, not just of citizenship, but of their humanity, and still dared to envision a world where there was plenty good room. Those are your ancestors. They were envisioning what I am calling democratic space. Say democratic space with me. Democratic space. And this is part of what I was sharing in Sale Hall. But Sale Hall for me is like being in Sleepy Hollow. You know, it's no matter what you do, it's hard to wake up the dead there, man. It's just Sale Hall. It's a memorial, it's a great site, but it's Sale Hall. Kind of like Ezekiel's dry bones in the valley, whatever that is. So, democratic space. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But democratic space arises out of two basic understandings of society. One has to do with the work of policing. I mentioned this last time in the Thurman lesson. Not policing in the conventional sense of a cop standing on a corner, but policing the social order of things. Governments are involved in maintaining strict order. Michel Foucault called it the order of things, determining what you know, when you know it, or whether you know it. Those who police, they make the rules. They enforce the rules, and they determine who is part of the rule making. You wouldn't be aware of that happening in our country right now, but it is. That's called policing. And right now we have a new generation of police who are part of a new administration in this country. I like to call them the new November men. The November men. They make the rules, they enforce the rules, they legislate the rules, and most days you wake up and you're not even aware that somebody has already determined who you will be in the next 5 to 10 years. That's policing. The second concept has to do with politics. Politics. Politics are antagonistic to policing. And I'm using the language of a French philosopher, political philosopher, Jean Rancière. He says politics disturb the status quo. They are antagonistic to policing because policing assumes that you can't speak. But folks who are concerned and engaged in politics dare to speak anyhow. They disrupt the order of things. Today we're talking about Martin Luther King Jr. We mentioned Howard Thurman in the last lecture, but Martin King's vision of the world house that we'll talk about is antagonistic to policing. He's talking about how do you expand democratic space? How do you expand the space of the body, of the mind, and the spirit? When the architects of this nation came together, they had already determined who would be in and who would be out forever. That was their understanding. And here comes a young black man out of Atlanta who wakes up on the run. That's all I wanted to do as a preface today. You with me? Yes, sir. That's kind of a review. And I'm going to try my best not to bore you because I told you before, there's a special place in hell for people who bore one another. They put them way in the corner on the other side of hell. And I just don't want to wake up in hell. I want to wake up running. So, 3 things today. The shape of democratic space. What does that look like in Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision? What is the shape of democratic space? You're understanding democratic space now, right? It's between policing and politics. That's what I'm doing. That's disrupting. Standing up, choosing your seat, and sitting down, that kind of thing. I want to also talk a little bit about global citizenship as a technical term, because I think that's the kind of leadership you're going to have to embody in the 21st century. Even in this 3rd decade of the 21st century, you're going to have to think globally. And I already know that Dr. Adams and the team this is the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership, but you've got to think globally. So I'm going to think about King's vision of the world house and its relationship to global citizenship. And thirdly, the implication of King's vision for the education and formation of ethical leaders as global citizens. We got that, right? I haven't bored you yet, have I? No. Okay, good, man. I'm under indictment. So Martin Luther King Jr. woke up running. I always say he didn't moonwalk into history. He didn't stroll into history. The brother woke up running. He graduated Morehouse College at 19 years old. He finished seminary by the time he was 22. He finished his Ph.D. at Boston University when he was 26 and was already the acknowledged leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. He woke up running. From 1957 to 1968, he gave over 2,500 speeches and had traveled over 6 million miles. I didn't make that up. I got that off the Nobel laureate website and the King Center. That's deep, ain't it? Just how much he packed in such a short period of time. And so while he was running, I always argue that he changed the leadership equation, which was an equation not just in the larger world, but also especially in black life, from position and privilege and power to what he called transformed nonconformist. That means he took the parochially applied principles of democracy and translated them into action items. He wasn't just talking about all people are created equal. He acted like all people were created equal. And this is part of his work in creating the space of plenty good room. Still with me? I can smell somebody's brain burning over there. So in the short time, King and those brave known and unknown souls who struggled with him expanded the moral grammar of American history. History, I'm not saying King was the only person, please, but he was an incredible individual whom he thought had been set up. He said, zeitgeist has tracked me down. The spirit of the times has caught me on his run. Now that's deep. I wish I had time. And that's deep. What if you were out there running and something grabbed you and it woke you up to your destiny? I think that's what King is trying to tell us. I think that's what we got to think about when we wake up and we dare to move beyond the sequestered logic of the spaces that we're in the 21st century. He was running a social justice errand, and this is Thurman's language in the divine context. There's social context, and we learn a lot. How many sociology majors here? You learn context, don't you? Social race, class, gender, sexuality, all of these variables that define the social economics. Thurman thought that there was also a divine context that was embedded in social context. We could just call it sacred space. You don't have to be a Christian or a Muslim or even part of an organized religion to understand sacred space. There are some things in this world, my brothers, if you haven't discovered, you will, that are sacred. And one of those things that is sacred is human personality. To be human is to be sacred. It's not just reason. That's what we learn in Euro-Western culture. Reason is the dominant force for human beings. But we're also profoundly, the best word for me is spiritual. There are some things that we can do, King says this everywhere, where we transcend not just ourselves, but we transcend humanity when we are awake. Large conversation, but I'll spare you there. I'm trying, hey, what's up, what's up? He woke up to his destiny. Now, everybody here knows this quote, don't you? Anybody here has not ever seen this anywhere before or heard this on the newsreels? Yes. So that's why I'm going to tell you. That's why I asked. On the night of April the 3rd, 1960 what? Martin Luther King Jr. was at the Charles Mason Temple in Memphis. It was named for a great preacher by the name of Charles Mason who started Church of God in Christ. Really started Pentecostalism in this country, but that's another complex story. But he's there, and he's speaking to whom? Garbage workers. He's there to fight for garbage workers who are protesting. And guess what? The garbage workers, when they were protesting in Memphis, they wore a sign that said, I am a man. If they were wearing that sign today, they would be saying, I am human. They had to announce their humanity in order to achieve democratic space. So on the night of April the 3rd, Martin Luther King Jr. speaks to this crowded auditorium, and he tells them about his vision of the promised land. And this speech is part of what he shares with them. He compares himself in this speech to Moses, standing over the promontory of Mount Pisgah. He alludes to Moses looking over into the promised land. And he's saying to the people who are present, this is where we are. Then he makes this long, rolling speech. And I'd like somebody with a great booming voice to read this. Read this for us aloud with your best voice. Or else I'm going to read it, and it's not going to be as interesting. Yeah, you got a voice. Can you stand?
Oh, sure.
You want to hold the mic?
Okay,
good. Okay.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it doesn't matter with me now, because I've been on the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he has allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I am happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Good work. Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Promised land. Now, in the 21st century, we must interrogate the promised land because it can be very complicated. Whose promised land are we talking about? Are we talking about the promised land of Moses? I don't think that's what King was after. He was making that allusion. That's called a mimetic device, mixed memory. Everybody was on board because they knew that imagery, right? But what was he talking about? He wasn't talking about Moses' promised land. He wasn't talking about Israel's promised land. Because when you read the Bible, that promised land is very complicated. Because that promised land is a place where they leave and they go and kill all the Canaanites in order to get that land. I don't think King meant that. So when you are in a classroom, when you leave Morehouse College, and somebody brings that to you, just remember that I don't think that's what King was after. King was making the case that this promised land for African Americans at that point was a land where there was plenty good room, where there was democratic space, where there was social mobility, where I had economic rights, where I had political citizenship rights, and where I was human, fully human. That's deep. If I were in another world in another time, I'd still say that was deep. That's deep. So let's talk about the promised land, the shape of democratic space in King's vision of the promised land. Remember Malcolm, well, what's Malcolm's real Muslim name, Dr. Jensen? El Shabazz. What? El Haji Malik El Shabazz. He would prefer that now. He wouldn't want to. But he was talking about another kind of land, just so you get an idea of what's going on. He's saying that there ought to be a land for us, just for us. That's the promised land. That's what Malcolm would have said. That's the promised land. You know, there was a long struggle in African American life and history where we struggled with these two contending ideologies around land. Some wanted to return to Africa, immigration. And there were a lot of white people who wanted us to return. And there were others who wanted to stay here and fight the battle of moral reform and claim this land here that had soaked up our blood and tears. Frederick Douglass, William Whipper, Martin Delany, Blyden. All of these folks had some serious debates in the middle of the 19th century about what we do with land. Territory. King's vision is the reform vision. He's not a reformist, but it's a reformed vision. It says that moral authority is the only authority worth fighting for and living for. That's pretty deep, man. But it was not divested from land for King. Land for King, democratic space, referred to economic rights, political rights that were citizenship rights, and more importantly, the idea, as we'll see, that it's not just in U.S. territory. Plenty good room for King had to do with the World House. That same night, April the 3rd, 1968, when he stood there at Mason Temple, he made another appeal. He said that he believed that we've got to learn to move beyond our nationalistic boundaries and imagine another kind of house. He borrowed this from a scholar that most scholars I know are still trying to find the source. But in his 1964 lecture for the Nobel Prize, King talked about a world house where we all live together, black and white, Jew and Gentile, Muslim and Hindu and Buddhist, and he goes on and on and on. But a world house, not the racialized American house. These are counterposed in King's understanding of democratic space. You still with me? Do I need to let you pause for a minute? Because it's going to go deeper. It's only going to go deeper. Now, I ain't going to get loose here. I'm going to go down. You ready? Okay, good. All right. The great scholar Wahima Lubiano, you might write it down, edited a little book entitled The House That Race Built. The American house, according to her, Toni Morrison, Cornel West, a bunch of folks who contributed to this little book, Wahima Lubiano. It's basically the argument that the architecture of American society was designed without you in mind. Only your body, your constricted body, as I shared earlier, was of value. So this house that race built, King is suggesting that we expand it to a world house. That's quite a feat. That's quite a dream, because we're still struggling with the house that race built. Has anybody been listening to the news? Does anybody really know what's going on? Hello? Okay, Walter. He says there's a house, there's a world house where we must live together in peace, in community, or perish apart as fools. So democratic space, to go back to nail this, I want the brother in the red. You were playing with your voice a moment ago. I heard it. I heard your voice. Read that for me in your best voice. Can you do it with a tenor?
I can try.
Can you stand?
Democratic space has to deal with the right to dissent, which has its basis in the fundamental respect afforded to others because of our shared human dignity.
In these extensive notes, if you don't mind just standing a minute, dialogue, in these extensive notes I got over there, this idea of dissent is for real. Most of our government is based upon a Roman model and is mixed with Greek culture, Greco-Roman. And in Greek culture, anybody who was outside of Greek culture was a barbarian. So that means you didn't have their language. They called you a barbarian because of your speech. They said that is not speech because it's not attached to logos, to reason. So when you speak, they didn't hear you. That's deep stuff, man. I mean, you could be talking away making your complaints, screaming, protesting, Black Lives Matter, and they won't hear you. What they do is get the whole military and the cabinet and come out to the square in D.C. and dismiss you because they can't hear you. Thanks for, I just wanted you to stand, so make sure you heard that.
No, I definitely did.
So dissent here is daring, it's courageous. How dare you speak when you can't speak? When an architecture of the house has been set up in a way where even when you speak, you're not heard because you are not human. I don't mean that for you all now, but I think we're trying to go back to a place where people can't speak. At least that's the last I heard from the White House, that maybe certain people in this country can't speak. If you're trans, you can't speak. If you're a certain kind of person of caliber, like from Haiti, like from Venezuela, you can't speak. And our president called those at one point holes of defecation. That's not the way he said it, but he said that those countries are countries that are holes of defecation because you can't speak. So dissent has to do with your right, which has its basis in the fundamental respect afforded to others because of our shared human dignity. And for Martin King, it went further. It was because we were created, he felt, in the image of God, that we were sacred beings, that we were worthy of respect. So how do I move, very briefly, and then I'd like to talk about citizenship, and then I'll be through. Are you with me still? Please tell me you're with me for real. I'm very insecure, man. Once upon a time, I wore belts and suspenders at the same time. Very insecure. I need to know that you're with me, right? Don't let me hang out here by myself. Okay. Why do I mention global citizenship? Even when I was at Morehouse, I spent a lot of time in Salzburg, Austria, as faculty at the Salzburg seminar. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you where all of this comes from me. Working with people from around the globe who didn't belong together, according to the small house that we're talking about. And some of my lifelong friends I met there, but the point was that we were trying to imagine a world where everybody was a citizen. So it didn't matter where you were from. You had inherent rights because of the dignity and worth of your personality. And so what we did was collect people from everywhere. And I took Morehouse men there, and you know what you guys did, just blew the place away. Everybody was so impressed because you had voices, you know, you could talk. Nothing like a Morehouse man talking. Brothers, I've seen you in grad school. You don't even know what's going on in the classroom, but you take it over. It's just an amazing thing. It's an amazing feat. I was kind of hard on the Morehouse men, I'm just being honest with you. I just want to make sure they left with at least something in their heads and not just in their mouth and heart, right? But it was a powerful thing. To see, meet, feel, touch, know the other who is extraordinarily different from you. By heritage, by history, by language, by culture. So global citizenship refers to this sense of belonging to a broader community and a common humanity. It emphasizes the political, economic, social, and cultural interdependency between the local, national, and the global. And there's some incredible work going on right now. I was in the Netherlands last year. big conference. It's amazing what's happening in the world. Some of you know, I know you know. But like in Taiwan right now, people in Taiwan are fighting with the Ukrainians because they have common oppressors. Young men, young women are part of large gatherings because they see themselves as common humanity. I do want to accentuate this, that global citizenship, before I go further, does not refer to legal rights. I'm not talking about legal, rational legal rights of states. I'm talking about the united web of humanity and our interconnectedness, and thus our moral or ethical obligation to nature, big nature of which you are part, and the larger world society. That's important because nation states have their own laws, their own rules, their own regulations. I'm not asking for intrusion, nor was King, but he thought that when the demos, out of which democracy is arrived, the multitudes, when they come together under one purpose, under one singular vision of humanity, the world changes. Even the legal, rational constructions, even the neoliberal oligarchy of this day cannot stand the people when they come together. My language is when they congregate, conjure, and conspire at the intersections where worlds collide. I know it's hard on you. Man, it's almost 5 o'clock, isn't it? Man, it's hard to stay awake. But the greatest challenge of leadership in the 21st century is what? Stay awake. Man, just stay. Again, when you get sleepy, just stand up and scream. You can jump up and down, but stay awake. At the end of his life, King asked this question: where do we go from here? This world house, this global citizenship vision for King was very important. And it wasn't just sentimental. It wasn't just religious, as some of us think of religion. This was strategic. It was educational. It was curricular. It was pedagogical. It has to be taught. If you're going to be a leader in the 21st century, you need to experience what it means to be in those spaces, and then you need space where you can reflect upon what you've experienced. That's good education. That's praxis. That's knowing things, not just talking about things. At Morehouse College and other HBCUs right now, I'm sure President Thomas would agree with this. The question is, where do we go from here? When we have an administration which is trying to erase history, banning books, offering lies, ignoring, casting our history aside like a foul and profane thing. If that doesn't get under your skin, you may not even be aware that you're in a body. So what, Walter Fluker, do you suggest? This is what I'm suggesting. This is all I ever suggested. When I first got to Morehouse, I'll let y'all in on a secret. You all at least 1 generation, 2 generations past. Everybody wasn't ready for ethical leadership here. Now, I'm just telling you. Some of my beloved brothers whom I see on the wall, they've gone on to glory. They weren't ready for ethical leadership. They didn't know what it meant. So I've spent at least those 12 years just trying to say, man, I'm not trying to interfere with your game. I'm just trying to say that if we're going to have a serious conversation about leaders, you just can't run out to corporate America and make a lot of money and be an ethical leader. You can be in corporate America and be ethical and be a leader. But you just can't run out there and say, boy, I'm going to compete with the rest of the world and get all of the money, all of the women or the men, whatever your pleasure, and live in a house on a hill. That's not what I'm talking about with ethical leadership. Ethical leaders are leaders who arise out of certain moral traditions. You did not arise out of a historical vacuum. You are here in this body. The cute word is, if you're on a date, this habitus. You have a habitus. There are certain dispositions. There are certain ways you see the world. There are certain ways you move. I was telling my wife the other night when Houston was playing the Gators. That was a rough game. I don't want to go into that. But I said, you see how cool these brothers are? I mean, the brothers are so cool they make their clothes look nervous. What is it about us? That's habitus. I mean, I mentioned this last time. You know, I'm talking to you because I'm trying to keep you with me. I know, you understand that, don't you? Good. Listen, I saw Obama, I was telling y'all, when he got off that helicopter. You know how that little swag is? Man, he didn't learn that in Hawaii. He didn't learn that in Indonesia. That's South Side, Chicago, habitus, swag. Habitus, disposition, how you see the world, how you move, be in the world. Habitus. Ethical leaders come out of certain traditions. They're cultural narratives. They're stories. You're a storied creature. You're part of countless stories that you embody. And guess what? You act, and therefore you lead out of those stories. Make it quick for you. So how do you prepare what King called transformed nonconformists in global space? I think the first thing you do is to think about this concept of character. Everybody seeing me? I got about 10 more minutes to go. I think if I'm right? 10 more minutes. Character. What do you think, bro, when Tupac, when I say character, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Character. Character, yeah, I was talking about you. Mm-hmm.
The kind of makeup of who you are, the
Yeah.
things you do when people aren't watching.
Right, character. And that's a classic definition. There are some other definitions, like character is something that is inscribed into who you are, your identity. You know, the values you learn at home, at church, in the synagogue, in the mosque, in school, values. I want to play with character just a little different and I hold those other definitions as well. But character as a narrative script. What story or stories are you a part? Who your granddaddy? Who is your grandmama? What are these larger stories of which you are part? I was born in Mississippi, but I was raised in Chicago, Illinois. Again, that's why I'm cool. Mississippi and Chicago together, man, that's a bad combination. Everybody has a narrative, yes.
I want the actual part.
I was born in Vaden. That's near Winona.
Jackson, that's why I was asking, sorry.
Jackson, homeboy, yeah. So we're all part of larger narratives. Character for me is what role you play in that larger story. Character is arriving on the stage of the world as we think of global citizenship and asking, what is my role? What character do I play in the narrative? I got a role. At least 4 or 5 generations have passed since Martin King. And guess what, my brothers? 4 or 5 generations, each generation forgets more and more what the story is. And if you don't know the story, you don't know what role you're supposed to play in the larger narrative. And if somebody else is telling your story, you play roles that they inscribe for you. You arrive on the stage of history as an anxious stutterer, or you're highly improvisational. Therefore, ethical leaders in global space out of their personal space called character, remember, retell, and relive their stories. Say that after me. They remember, retell, and relive their stories. That's character. That's personal. That's me. In social context. Sociology major. Civility is a strange word because most people think of civility as being sentimental or having etiquette, right? You go to dinner and you know where the napkin and the forks and stuff are. You know how to dress, Morehouse men. Y'all still get those little jackets?
No, we just get a shirt and a tie.
You get a shirt and a tie. But you know how to dress up, right? Show up in public space. That's kind of civility, but civility is deeper than that. I'll say this very briefly. During the 10th century and after, Europe had some major problems. I mean, like the Black Plague, a lot of disease. And there were people, thinkers, philosophers, many of them religious. They began to distribute pamphlets on helping people to live civilly. It really began as a public hygiene problem. People didn't wash their hands after they did other things. And they go to the table and eat. You ever seen Braveheart, Mel Gibson? You didn't notice this probably, but he runs off the battlefield, takes this big old thing of water, drinks out of it, and then he washes his hands. Civility says, no, there's an etiquette for the community so that we don't make the mistake of killing other people. Over time, civility becomes more and more important, especially in society for citizens, because citizens need to know how to disagree without killing one another. And we live in a world where people, when they disagree, are in danger. Don't you see it? Can't you feel it? Don't miss it. And if you live in the world in a black body, I know you know this. I used to teach my sons. One is a Morehouse graduate, 2008, Clint. I said, Clint, when we were living upstate New York, I said, when the cops stop you, turn on NPR, turn on the classical music, and change your voice. And he learned that. He learned to do that by the time he got to Atlanta. Cop stopped him. He said, turn on the music, some nice Beethoven or something. Said, hi, officer, how are you doing? Oh, what the heck, man? Jeez, come on. Might save your life. But King was interested in a deeper understanding of civility. This is my point. Civility for King was a subversive weapon that led to transformation. Don't play down nonviolent resistance. You may choose not to use it. There may be circumstances where you got to back off, but it's the most powerful way to maintain a civil society that we have. If we could just practice it among our own people, we get a long ways. Learning how to agree and disagree without maiming the other, without abusing the other, without killing the other. Civility. And I have these values here. I'll skip by it just because of time. But under character, there was integrity, empathy, and hope. Here is recognition. Begins with salubono. I see you. I see you. I see you. What happens if I don't see you? What happens if I render you invisible by my look? Civility is about seeing the other. It's about respecting the other. And if you got the heart for it, brothers, it's about having reverence for the other. Because the other, in King's vision, is sacred. You won't kill something that is sacred. Okay. How do we prepare ethical leaders who will perform at their highest capacities as moral virtuosos. What is a virtuoso? Give me an example of a virtuoso. Anybody? Anybody like music? Someone?
Luther Vandross.
Yeah, virtuoso, man. Because, Ron, he did what? He reached the highest. Excellent. Excellencies. Ray Charles. Aretha Franklin. Athletes, Michael Jordan. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I saw Michael Jordan do some stuff that I know you can only do if you're from another planet. But these are virtuosos. What happens when you get to community is that you begin to become moral virtuosos. Those are moral excellencies, and those are courage. I mean, you have the fine acts of courage. King didn't back down. In fact, it cost him dearly. Justice, I'm not backing down. Compassion, learning how to fight for justice and still maintain compassion for the least of these. Choose your seat and sit down. Come on. So now in 2006, and I'm closing, I was in South Africa. I was lecturing on ethical leadership. And from what I hear now in South Africa, I should probably go back. But I was lecturing on ethical leadership. And I ended up in Durban, in Pietermaritzburg. It's a little town out in the Durban area. And there is a memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. In 1893, Gandhi gets on a train running an errand for his boss, and they kick him off the train because he's a coolie. He wasn't allowed in the white section. And that's the greatest mistake they ever made. Gandhi sat there in that train station all night long. I talked with his granddaughter, Ella Gandhi. She said, all night long asking the question, what is my duty? What is my duty? Do I go back to India, or do I stand here and fight? This little old puny man, you ever seen Gandhi? Gandhi was so puny and little and scared that when he was in London, he could not even hold his paper to give a speech in public. But that night, he stood in that station, he took a seat, and he sat down. And when he went back to India, he challenged the hegemony of the great British Empire. And the world has never been the same. In Greensboro, 4 students, just like you, they decided that they were going to sit down in Woolworths downtown in Greensboro at the lunch counters during segregation. They came, they spit on them, they beat them. You've seen the film. But they sat down. Next day, 15 more people showed up. Next day, 30 more people showed up. The next day, 300 people showed up because they chose their seats and they sat down. Will you sit with those struggling to survive in undeserved areas? Not just black people, and you definitely should sit with black people, but what about people who are in El Salvador now? Does that tug on you at all? Incarcerated? Will you sit in spaces where policies are shaped? You're going to do that one day, brothers. They're going to come and get you because they want you on Wall Street. They want you in different centers because you're Morehouse men, because you can talk and you know how to show up in public space. You're going to be in public health. You're going to be in science. You're going to be there. Will you sit in spaces where policies are shaped, not merely to protest what's wrong, but to propose what is right? What is right? King used to say, we're doing this because we're right, just, and sustainable. Will you sit in spaces of discomfort and tell the truth? Especially when it challenges your formation. That is, all the things you've been taught to do, when it goes against the grain and you stand there anyhow. You got the heart for it? It's normally not the boisterous person. It's normally the person who's sitting back listening and thinking and feeling and knowing and understands his or her duty to others. I'm not in this world alone. My good friend Malidoma Patrice Sommet, I used to bring him to Morehouse. He would always say, my brothers, if you want to get home, you must give the other a ride. Will you sit not above or apart, but with global colleagues? Look at BBC, even if you don't read the London Times, if you don't read The Guardian, if you don't read The Economist. Just look at BBC and see what's happening in the world. Anybody here ever been to India? I'm closing now. You ever been just to India or China? You've been to Jamaica? Yes? That's what I'm saying. What did you see? When you go there, you say, God, I thought we were poor. Does your ethical leadership vision include global colleagues? Don't go there as a savior or a skeptic, but as a co-creator of solutions rooted in justice and humility. And finally, will you risk your platform? You're going to be there. This is what college presidents of HBCUs are doing now. This is hard. This is hard. Will you risk your platform, your funding, your recognition, your comfort to name injustice when you see it? Or will you fold over? Will you pine? Will you compromise? If you dare to be courageous, you might even bump into yourself. Thank you all for listening. I hope I didn't bore you.